Well, a special edition of Jay's Sports Bar this week. Big breaking news for the Boise State Athletics program. They are moving to the Pac-12, leaving the Mountain West, a move that will officially take place July 1st, 2026. Brady Frederick joins me, and Brady, this is news that Boise State fans have long been awaiting, and really news that the university itself has been chasing for probably 15 to 20 years now, and today they finally clear that hurdle. They plan to leave the Mountain West and join the Pac-12 Conference.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a team get rewarded through conference realignment. Of course, for Boise State, they're joining the Pac-12. It's not quite the same Pac-12 that they wanted to join, years ago. But the exciting thing is only 6 teams in there. You absolutely need at least 2 more within that grace period. It'll be fun to see who they go out and grab to add into it. At least 2, but as many as they want. And see if they can turn this into a power conference. Yeah,
over the next half hour or so, you're going to hear from Jeremiah Dicky. We're going to break down exit fees, why this is a good move for Boise State, and so much more. But, as it begins, as we begin, Brady, I think that this move makes a lot of sense because now Boise State is joining a league where they don't have to deal with really like the bottom half of the Mountain West Conference, which doesn't bring a ton of value. They join a league that has some good football teams already in Oregon State and Washington State. And now I just feel like the league is very concentrated, right? They have 6 teams at the moment. They plan on getting to 8 teams. I should take that back. They have to get to 8 teams because that is the NCAA requirement for a conference to be recognized as an FBS conference. They have a 2-year grace period. Now, all the other Pac-12 schools that left this summer, that's when the grace period kicked off. So it has to be finalized by that July 1st, 2026 date. They have to be at 8 teams in order to still have that FBS affiliation. I certainly expect that's going to happen. We'll dive into what teams they could be exploring a little bit later on. I just think this is a significant move for Boise State because it also, as Jeremiah Dicky said, will offer them more financial opportunities.
Yeah, and better viewership opportunities. The Pac-12 is still a national brand, even though it is not what it used to be. And for now, I like that it's geographic to an extent. But obviously, in the world of college football, that might change pretty soon.
It might change, and I expect it to change. And I think when they explore, I think they will explore teams out east. But it is interesting, Brady, and that's one thing that kind of hit me today is like you kind of go over all these questions that are almost always asked during realignment. And one of them is the overall well-being of the student athlete. How does it make sense to send a volleyball player from UCLA out to Rutgers to play, in January? And that doesn't make a lot of sense. But at least for the time being, Boise State is actually in a more geographically significant or convenient area right now going into the Pac-12 than they were even in the Mountain West. And so when it comes to that, it actually makes a lot of sense for Boise State.
Another way to look at it is if you have 6 teams, let's say they get back to 12, the title number of the conference, you at least have half of your teams in the West Coast and maybe half is on the East Coast. You have a pod situation that a lot of these conferences have discussed. For now, I really like it. I think it makes a lot of sense. Maybe they add more from the West, but maybe they add more from the East and just in a way that makes sense. You have the opportunity to do realignment correctly. Not a lot of conferences really have so far. It's been more about following the money rather than boosting your conference prestige.
I agree with you. That's what it feels like. I mean, all these conferences already kind of start with an inflated number, and now the Pac-12 is kind of a small number, and they're going to be very calculated on who they add, right? Because you have your revenue-generating piece of the pie, right? A revenue-sharing piece of the pie. And everybody you add, those little pieces of the pie get smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's why now that they're at 6 teams, they love the 6 teams they had, they will be very calculated on which teams they want to add to that pie. And I know like already a popular topic is what's up with UNLV. It seems like being in Vegas, that would be a very attractive option. But, I just think you look at what other conferences have done in terms of their expansion. The Big Ten, they came west and got into the Mountain and the Pacific time zones. You look at the Big 12, they went and got Central Florida. Now they're in the Eastern time zone. And now they moved west and accumulated schools like Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado. So now they stretch almost coast to coast when it comes to being in a number of time zones. So I think personally, and I don't have anything to validate this at the moment, I think that is the direction that the Pac-12 will go, though. I think they do push east. They do look at Texas, or schools in Texas. They look at a Tulane, a Memphis, even a South Florida to try to stretch into those time zones, which now all of a sudden, as you set up your TV package, you are on from morning to noon to night on any given Saturday if that's the way that you choose to set up your TV package. So They'll be very calculated moving forward. That is the area that I would expect them to push. And talking with Jeremiah Dicky today, his opinion is 2 to 4 teams. He reiterated that's his opinion. He's one of 6 right now ADs in the Mountain. We're going to have to, right?
Pac-12.
Pac-12 Conference. He's one of 6 ADs, and they're all going to have an input along with the presidents. But I would expect that to play out sometime in the next year or so. They have to hit the ground running on July 1st, 2026, though, Brady.
And you only need to get 2 more teams. If you want to get this up to 12, if you want to get up to 14, 18, these super conferences we've seen, that can all happen later down the line. You can be more picky with your acquisitions down the way. Right now, it's about getting 2 more teams that fit this conference and are going to help build it. Also, something to keep an eye on. You know, this is baseless rumors at the moment, but the ACC, you know, has had some instability. Clemson and Florida State are suing the ACC. If they were to leave and we see a similar implosion that the Pac-12 originally experienced, teams like SMU, Cal, Stanford, would they be a good addition to the new Pac-12? For some teams, it might be their only option.
You're exactly right on that. And that's why when there's a question of why not take more Pac-12 teams at this point in time, there's a lot that has to play out, as you just said. There's also financial ramifications that are going to impact the departing schools of the Mountain West and the Pac-12 Conference as a whole. So let's dive into that for a second. Now, the Mountain West and the Pac-12, which is only 2 teams, they came to an agreement this year where those 2 teams were going to pay $14 million essentially to be able to keep their football seasons alive and play Mountain West schools. Part of that agreement was basically a fee they agreed to where if the Pac-12 poached any Mountain West schools, there was going to be a significant financial ramification. So it's an escalator. The first school is $10 million. The second school is $10.5 million, and so on and so forth. You add it all up, and by taking these 4 schools, the Pac-12 will owe the Mountain West Conference $43 million. Separate from that, each school will now owe the Mountain West a fee. If it's within 1 year, it would be $34 million. In this case, they're giving them over a year's notice, so that is cut in half to $17 million. To dive into that super quick, I think all that needs to be negotiated still with the Pac-12 Conference, meaning does Boise State really have to pay all $17 million, or is the Pac-12 going to help with that? I think you're going to see the Pac-12, given the lawsuit settlement and all the money they got.
The war chest, as they like to call it.
Exactly. They are utilizing the war chest right now, my friend. I think you're going to see them probably help the current schools that are leaving the Mountain West. But there's also another key date involved in that. So 2 years after the Mountain West and the current Pac-2 agreed to this schedule this fall, 2 years after that agreement expires, then some of those penalties are lifted. So you take the 4 schools you want now. It doesn't mean you can't add more Pac-12 schools later, but you could do so at potentially a reduced rate, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I believe the Pac-12 announced that they are going to be paying at least a portion of these exit fees for these schools to help them out. I mean, the total number was around $100 to $200 million that Oregon State and Washington State were just splitting between each other.
Right, and if you just look at what the current finances of the 4 teams leaving the Mountain West, joining the Pac-12, when you combine what the schools owe and what the Pac-12 Conference will owe the Mountain West, it is $111 million.
Yeah, and it'll, in a way, and it's sad to see the Mountain West get put in this position, but a new media deal likely is going to undercut the Mountain West deal. When they negotiate all of that, I think the Pac-12, the new Pac-12 teams are going to be in a good spot with their annual revenue from television rights. Yeah,
and so now let's continue down this path. So we'll look at like college football playoff and things like that. You know, this is an opportunity for the newly reformed Pac-12 to enter this discussion of having access, like some of the other conferences do, to the college football playoff. And that's something that's going to have to be decided a couple of years from now, Brady, and that's why it's going to be so important for the Pac-12 to get their ducks in a row by that deadline on July 1st, 2026. But if they're able to do that, then that also probably means it's in some way, shape, or form, they've already really damaged the Mountain West Conference. If they push east, they will take some of the best programs out of the American Athletic Conference. And now all of a sudden, the Pac-12, without a doubt, in my opinion, would be much closer to those Power 4 right now, maybe one day again Power 5 conferences, than those Group of 5 conferences. They're all of us. That gap is now growing between those two. And that's why I think it's just significant that that Boise State's able to make this move now.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, this isn't a guaranteed thing that the Pac-12 becomes a Power 5 again or an autonomous 5, whatever the new verbiage they've been using is. But I do believe out of all the G5 conferences, the Pac-12 would be the front runner to take that leap ahead.
Yeah.
And in a way, I think that's extremely desirable for these other schools that, like Boise State, think they've been playing, great football for years, have a great supportive fan base, and have done everything right to earn a spot to be in the Power 5. I think it's going to almost be a fight to get in here.
Yeah, I think that going back to what you originally said to start this, and you said it's not maybe the Pac-12 that everybody envisioned a couple of years ago, and I get that. But I still think it offers this fresh, new starting point that they can really create what they want. And it will be concentrated. It's not going to be watered down by teams that they don't want. And I just love their opportunity, whether it be with the teams they add, whether it be with the platforms they use to, the CW, I watched our alma mater the other week.
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, man.
They're doing some unique stuff. We talked about it. They put a body cam on a referee. They had a way up in the air, top of the press box shot down on the field. We had talked about it. This is the kind of stuff that the XFL did back in the 2000s that became so influential, became a huge part of college and NFL football broadcasting. Innovation is exciting because you're in a position where you need to.
Yeah, and I feel like it also just injects a lot of fun and life into this thing. And another thing that I like about this, and not to say the student part of student athlete is not important, but it just felt like so many times in the past when the Pac-12 was trying to, to find their way forward, academics really impacted what they were doing athletically. And at the end of the day, it killed the conference, or darn near killed the conference, right? And so now, talking with Jeremiah Dicky today, that wasn't a major talking point. Yes, it is important, don't get me wrong, but you don't have some of the pretentious schools with a spot at the table still that just want to stick their nose in the air because that's what they want to do. That's not what was going to be the best for the Pac-12 conference. And like I said, it almost killed it. And now you have a bunch of, the word that keeps getting thrown out is like-minded individuals pooling together in what should be a pretty fun conference. And for me personally, man, I love the thought of, no offense, but I love the thought of swapping New Mexico and San Jose to go to Corvallis and Pullman, two fantastic college towns.
And two great brand new regional rivalries. I think we talked about it really early on years ago that Washington State and Boise State should play annually. It's a quick drive between Boise and Pullman. Both fan bases will show out to the other one.
Yep.
And they're historically sort of evenly matched teams, both in on-field product, but also culturally. Both are underdogs in different ways. Boise State is the underdog who overperforms on a national setting. Washington State for years was one of the lower tier teams in a great conference that every once in a while would punch above their weight and shake things up. And the last two games that these two teams faced off in, one of them was a last-second drive that Washington State came up short. The other one was a triple overtime thriller that Boise State fell in Pullman. I think we're getting exciting football out of it. And, part of the change that we're experiencing in college football, some of it is new and some of it is new traditions, but this at least makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And just to reset this here real quick, Boise State announces today they have accepted an invitation to join the Pac-12 Conference. The Pac-12 unanimously accepted, Boise State's, acceptance, I guess, to come into the Pac-12 Conference today. Now, the timeline on this, let's get into this really quick because it seemed like it happened quick. And, we were up late last night trying to confirm news and were able to do that. But the timeline on this, it really came down to these last few weeks. And I thought there was a little bit of an alarm that went off, Brady. There was an early September deadline that the Mountain West and the Pac-12 kind of agreed upon for the 2025 scheduling agreement. So they already have the 2024 done for this fall. Were they going to run it back and do something similar in 2025? Those negotiations kind of broke off earlier this month. And at that point, that seemed to say something. Because the Pac-12, Washington State and Oregon State, they don't have the brands like a Notre Dame to just go independent. It would be really, really hard for them to do that. So there had to have been something going on behind the scenes. And we found out that for the last few weeks, these discussions have been taking place with the four, I should mention, by the way, Colorado State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Boise State are the four Mountain West schools that are going to join the Pac-12 Conference.
Sort of the premier Mountain West programs,
I mean, really,
whether it's on-field success or at least national market, brand, things like that.
Well, I mean, to break those down really quick, you lose Southern California, right, with UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten. Now they at least get back into it by adding San Diego, so a very coveted market. By adding Fresno State, you get back into California, right? So that has value there. Colorado State has ties to Denver, another massive media market. And then maybe the biggest compliment of them all is Boise State doesn't have that media market size, but you know what they have?
A national brand.
A national brand and a really good football team, right? Really good football program, which is beyond just a team, a short amount of time. They've done it for 3 decades now. And so those are the selling points of those four schools. And so, I love the makeup of this league now. I think it's awesome, and I think they can only add and make it better from here.
Yeah, and it is sad, though, with change, the rivalry with Nevada kind of comes to a close. Obviously, they can schedule it as a non-conference game down the line. There's plenty of options down the way, but it's been sad to the Mountain West, I guess, is a young conference, only about 25 years, but it is sad to see some of these traditions go away.
It is. And you know what? Maybe that will work out in scheduling eventually, right? Like, now that you don't play, I mean, for instance, Washington State is on Boise State's future schedule.
Yeah.
Well, now that's a conference game, so Boise State would have the flexibility to maybe put a Nevada or some type of rivalry in there.
Find a way to be at Wyoming in late November for years to come.
Can we just celebrate that fact, man? We don't have to worry about going. I mean, soon nobody's gonna have to worry about going to Wyoming in late November. Yeah, exactly. Soon nobody's gonna have to worry about that trip, and it's great news. So let's go beyond football for just a second here and talk about other sports, because I think that this is good for other sports too. And when you talk about expansion, we talk about creativity. Yeah, football's one thing, but they can also maybe add other sports that are non-football.
Yeah.
Gonzaga, St. Mary's. You find a way to somehow add those two schools into the mix, and now all of a sudden this basketball conference looks like a legit basketball
conference. It's already
conference.
a very fun league when you look at it. I mean, especially Washington State and Oregon State seem to be peaking at the right time heading into it. But, yeah, I mean, it is really exciting. The conversations about Gonzaga and even St. Mary's joining, say, the Big 12 or the Big East, or all these rumors that we've been hearing for years. I mean, this is a great cultural fit for them, because I also always think Gonzaga thinks they would be just as competitive in this kind of league. It would be worth their while.
Yeah, and you can figure out how you want to make it worth their financial gains too. I mean, again, that's the beauty of this thing, is you have like-minded individuals that are going to try to be creative here and do what is best for the athletic scene within the conference. Speaking about other other sports, talking with Jeremiah Dicky today, he mentioned, that he's always loved the idea of bringing back some of the sports that Boise State, basically in baseball's case, walked away from a couple of years ago.
There's a big one that's very personal to you.
And so, you look at, the Pac-12 does have some decent baseball programs, namely Oregon State.
Oregon State's a national title, perennial powerhouse.
And so trying to find a way to complement them has to be of importance to Oregon State as well. And, I don't think that that's something that's going to be solved here in the near future or anything like that. There's so much that's moving. I mean, whether it be NIL and collective and how to pay players, and now all of a sudden there's more scholarship players because they've removed those restrictions and limits. And once upon a time, softball or baseball, for example, had 9 or 11, somewhere between 9 and 11 scholarships. They had to split up over a 35-player roster. Now you're going to be able to scholarship everybody at the NCAA level here in a few years. So there's so much that has to go into this. But I know that Jeremiah Dicky has said he would love to explore the opportunities and what it would look like to bring some of those sports back. Now, they have to remain Title IX compliant. That's number one. They have to remain financially responsible, and some of these sports might be viewed as non-revenue generating sports. So you can't, number three, sacrifice the potential success of your other teams that are already, established varsity programs by, adding more financial troubles potentially to the picture. So all of that would have to be evaluated, but it's interesting to hear it's it's not off the table.
Of course, and of course, the idea would be that if you can afford to add some of these extra schools because you should be generating more revenue on a new TV deal and all the perks of being in a new conference. Ideally, if everything goes well, you make money by going to the college football playoff. You get those bonuses. So yeah, it'll be something to monitor. It's funny how fast everything happens, but also how slow everything happens and how much we still have to wait and see.
I should get back to that. So the timeline on this, again, it's been in the process for the last few weeks. The actual invite from the Pac-12 that was extended to Boise State happened yesterday. So to quote Jeremiah Dicky, yesterday was a big day.
Yeah. And, credit to him, credit to Dr. Trump for making it happen. This is, the kind of heights that I think Boise State has been anticipating, waiting for, and almost expected at this point because they've, continued to do their part with their success on the field in football and men's basketball, which have been the two driving forces in terms of realignment.
Yeah, and I mean, with the program that Leon Rice has built, with what Spencer Danielson is doing now with the football team, and just the overall success and brand of the football team, this is a great play for the Pac-12 Conference. I mean, I
wish it happened 5 years ago.
I agree with you, man. But, I still think, you look at this, and when they will enter now versus maybe 5 years ago, it would have been an uphill battle battling, USC and UCLA and schools that just have much bigger athletic budgets.
For sure.
Now, everybody's going to get in this room and kind of look at each other and be like, hey, we're all kind of the same. And Boise State has proven time and time again,
do more with less.
They can do more with less. And right now, they just are kind of, it might not, an analogy doesn't really fit because everybody's kind of in the same boat, if you will.
Yeah, and it's
I just think it sets them up. It's a better chance for them to have immediate success in the fall of 2026 when they join this new conference.
Another thing I like how it's going to be a competitive conference. That was the Pac-12's downfall, is that it was almost too competitive because you'd have a playoff-bound Washington or Oregon or SC who would lose to a 5 or 6 win, Wazoo or Arizona State, and they would cannibalize each other was the word that everyone liked to use. I think that's fun. I think the way the college football playoff is set up right now makes that much more acceptable than it used to be. But you take a look at these 6 teams we have right now. Maybe you don't put a lot of respect on Colorado State just yet, although they continue to grow. It is kind of wide open within who's going to be the best team, and everybody's going to contend. And I also think this is a nice recruiting boost to see that teams are moving around. I expect everybody to continue to get better as we approach that inaugural season.
I mean, there are certainly recruits out there that are going to be like, no, I want to go to USC. I don't care that they're playing in the Big Ten.
But they were already going to.
But you're right. Now all of a sudden, though, I think that there are going to be recruits in California that go, oh man, maybe it's not so bad to stay out here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think this definitely helps boost Boise State in the short term and long term for recruiting, for that matter. And I see no harm in that in any way, shape, or form. So now, what is next? So Boise State will now be a member of they're still a member of the Mountain West Conference this year and the following year.
It's going to make media days a little more awkward this summer.
It's going to make media days kind of awkward this summer. I'm not going to lie, I will. But we went through this many moons ago with the Big East, and we all thought that Boise State was going to go there. Somebody asked me to compare those two. This feels so much more real than that ever did.
It feels a lot better.
Yeah, and I guess the difference, even when we talk about adding schools out east, now you're adding a few schools out east. You're not just like the San Diego State and Boise State kind of out by yourself. That they're kind of the outliers. No, they're still with the concentrated part of the conference.
Yeah.
That you'll add teams. So that's why this feels different to me. And but in the short term, Boise State's still in the Mountain West Conference, competing for the next 2 years, and then in that summer, starting in summer 2026, that extends into the 2027 school year, will be their first year in which they're full-fledged members of this newly formed Pac-12 conference.
Yeah, and we'll see if they add more teams in the meantime. I guess they have to add 2 more before we hit the inaugural season. But it'll be exciting, and maybe this season a bit of a target on Boise State's back this year. Because I know if I'm Wyoming, if I'm Nevada, I don't feel good about this.
No, that's a
Although they've always kind of had a target on their back.
They've kind of always had the target on their back, but you're exactly right. It amplifies it a little bit more. And just to touch on the future of the Mountain West Conference really quick, they're going to definitely have to look. I assume for them to maybe look at the Big Sky, backfill with those teams.
I think that would be really interesting.
You know, I think that you have Montana, Montana State. Look at the South Dakota State, even Idaho. I mean,
especially Idaho.
Those are schools that they're going to have
lock
to
in Jason Eck for a
right?
little bit longer.
Those are schools that they're going to have to look at and definitely consider. And they have $111 million to try to find it out. Really quick, we've recapped all of this, but I want you to hear from Jeremiah Dicky. We caught up with him today one-on-one, and this is what he had to say about all of the realignment news today. Jeremiah, you always say that you want to do epic at Boise State. Is Boise State moving from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 an epic move?
I believe so. You know, I'm bullish on who we are, and I'm always going to bet on ourselves. And, you know, movement creates opportunity. That's my role and responsibility here. And, you know, I said it the day I got here. It's always what's next. We are not going to sit back and let things happen. We are going to make them happen. And, you know, I'm not a magician. I'm not going to guarantee, you know, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow but I will guarantee that and I will always bet on us. I believe this is a great move for our institution, our athletic department, from a competitive excellence standpoint, from a revenue generation standpoint, and I believe it's the next step in us creating epic.
When you talk about revenue generation, and I know everything right now is probably it's kind of speculated as you will have to figure out TV deals and stuff in the future. How much more revenue do you think that Boise State could potentially make in the Pac-12 versus staying in the Mountain West?
I think a lot of that is to be determined. You know, as I look at the numbers, I know this move improves our financial situation instantly. Whether it's telling our story, there's going to be ancillary opportunities, but then overall from a media rights standpoint, and there's still 2 to 4 teams, you know, that we're going to have to add to continue to build this out. But how exciting is that, you know? And to me, that creates revenue opportunities for us. And I think, you know, Bronco Nation knows me well enough. We're going to, you know, plan the work the plan, and there are no guarantees, but I believe in our team and what we're building.
So this kind of seemed to come out of, you know, left field last night, I would say. Yeah. How long have you been in talks with the Pac-12 Conference? And then when was the official invite actually extended to Boise State?
Yeah, yesterday was a big day, and there was a lot of work being done behind the scenes. A lot of my teammates, you know, I can't say enough about Matt Wild and our Office of General Counsel, and it's been a stressful week to a certain extent, but an exciting week. These conversations, you know, we always knew that this was a potential opportunity. It obviously started escalating, you know, over the last few weeks, and the way these, you know, these moves come to fruition, you know, it sometimes happens extremely quickly. I'm not sure I believed it would happen on Monday this fast, but it did, and, you know, and I'm grateful for it.
Has Boise State informed the Mountain West that they plan to leave the conference effective July 1st, 2026 yet?
I have not talked to the conference yet. That is my plan today, to talk to Gloria and also reach out to the ADs. I'm extremely empathetic because I understand, you know, the challenges that this creates for them. But ultimately, Gloria is obviously aware, and that was handled, you know, with the presidents.
You look at the current you know, format in place, and there are stiff penalties for leaving the Mountain West Conference. Yeah. If you give them a year notice, which it appears you guys have given them well within a year notice, yeah, the penalty drops from $34 million to $17 million. The Pac-12, for taking 4 schools, will owe right around $43 million. Is there any way to anticipate how much Boise State will actually have to pay out of that projected $17 million exit fee?
Yeah, we have the projections, and ultimately it's based on the averages, and you know, we're still, you know, proud members of the Mountain West, you know, for this season and next, and some of that is to be determined. You know, there are a lot of moving pieces to this, and this is one of 100 steps, you know, as we look ahead, you know, and so those are conversations that will be had. Maybe
you answered the question already by accepting the invite to the Pac-12 Conference, but does that $17 million stand as a hurdle at all for Boise State as they make this move?
No. I'm confident in what we have, what we will have, and and whatever we don't, we'll go out and get. And I believe in that. Going through a process like this, it's challenging. Obviously, I'm a fundraiser at heart, and I haven't had any conversations with donors, and this was very confidential, and we kept it very close to the vest. And I'm looking forward to having those conversations. And like most decisions I make, we always have plan A through Z. and so this was the first of many steps, and now we're going to run out the ground balls on what that looks like from a revenue standpoint and bridging the gap this fiscal year, the next fiscal year, and my goal, and this is a non-negotiable, we're going to hit the ground running come July 1st, 2026.
What do you think the most attractive thing about Boise State was to the Pac-12 Conference? Obviously, a lot of this has to do with football, and you still feel like, even with this move, that Boise State would be the name brand when it comes to football moving into the Pac-12 Conference. But what was the most attractive thing you feel about Boise State?
Yeah, I think we're all like-minded institutions. When you look at us from a competitive standpoint, and obviously our brand speaks for itself. And I'm very grateful for that brand. That's why I'm here. But our job is to elevate it, and I believe we've done that over the last 3.5 years. I also think our success, on the field of play, and you look at what Leon and basketball has done. I think that's obviously an opportunity for this new conference when you look at the strength of basketball, and what that's becoming with units, and ultimately the potential of what we could bring to this conference. I'm biased, but the Treasure Valley is growing, and our state is growing. And we are the front porch of this state. And when you look at the regionality of the schools that we've added, and it makes a lot of sense across the board. And so I think I could say the same for San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State. Those are three schools that we've locked arms with before, and very much are on the forefront of being innovative and really investing into our facilities and into our programs. And that's something that I think is important.
When it comes to expansion, and you look at all these other conferences that are coast to coast, and I'm not necessarily saying that that's not the direction the Pac-12 can't go, but if you just look at the 6 known member institutions starting in 2026, you don't necessarily have to answer the question about student athlete wellness right now. Yeah. If anything, the geographical proximities of these schools are closer to Boise State than they were in the Mountain West.
Correct. And look, we still have to add more teams, and that's something that's top of mind. Mm-hmm. I love our student athletes, and we want to create the best experience for them, but that's something that we're going to have to think through. I think there's going to be opportunities, and not just where we compete, but where we recruit. This is everyone that we've now, the conference, the Pac-6 right now, are all in areas that we're pulling student athletes across 18 sport programs. I want 18 sport programs to be elite. I want the other 17 sport programs to be treated and viewed like football has been for 26 plus years. And that's going to be our goal, and that's why we're continuing to invest, and we're not going to stop.
If you do look at the Pac-12 Conference and the history of it, there is a bit of a baseball tradition there. And as it stands right now, Boise State and Colorado State would be the only schools in the Pac-12 without baseball programs. Is that anything that you would explore down the road?
Yeah, I believe I've said it publicly. I would love to add baseball and wrestling, back at some point. We have to navigate Title IX, and look, when you look at our industry, so much is still yet to be determined. Everyone saw what happened with the House settlement last week, and and what's going to end up happening with that. There's a number of other lawsuits. I still believe that there will be a break in football, towards the end of this decade, and I also believe we're going to get to collective bargaining. And so, a lot of that will be determined in the future, and that will impact whatever sports we add.
I think in the past, when there were discussions about any school joining the Pac-12, academics always came up.
Yeah.
As the conference now decides what is best for their athletic future, Was that at all a part of the discussion this time around?
No, not necessarily. I think it's extremely valuable for our institution and to be with, as we strive to be an R1, and I think we're aligned well with the schools that we're now partnered with, but not like it was in the past. We know who we are. We're exactly what this community needs us to be, and early on, it felt like you had to apologize for it. Now we're embracing it. We are the front porch of this state. We provide tremendous value and service to this community, and we're going to continue to do that. And I think that provides our institution a lot of opportunities moving forward.
This is always a bit of a loaded question when I ask you, but you look at the new lights at Albertson Stadium, the east side renovation, which should be finalized in October. A number of your other athletic venues have had upgrades, and now you're moving into the Pac-12 Conference. Dare I ask, what is next?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the east side. North end zone, the east side would be what's next. Extra mile is on our list. We're going to turf the outfield for softball. We're going to get a new turf for Albertson Stadium. We're never a finished product. We won't stop. We are going to continue, and there's so many opportunities ahead for us. Obviously, it's on me to figure out how we do it. And I told you earlier, A through Z, we're looking at every opportunity and option, and we have a plan for each. And we're going to continue to push forward because I believe in who we are, I believe in our team, and I'm always going to bet on us.
I know the tentative timeline for shovel and ground on the north end zone project is early 2025.
Yeah.
You mentioned the east side. Has there been any progress made towards that?
Not necessarily, other than the internal conversations and getting our ducks in a row. Navigating, doing any type of facility, there are a lot of moving pieces to that. And obviously the north end zone, it's taken us quite a while to get to this point, but we keep chopping. We're going to keep going, and I know we've talked before about the Aux Gym. And what do we do in that space? And we have been working on that, and I would say that's probably our next big project. Financing and resources are always going to be a challenge, but that's no different than the last 30 years. We're going to find a path forward, and I think there's opportunities that we've been working on that will provide those resources that will allow us to start knocking out some of these other facilities. We have to monetize our operations. We have to create a better fan experience. We have to positively impact the student athlete experience. That's my responsibility. That's our responsibility, and we're going to continue to do that.
You look at all those big picture projects, and earlier I asked when you guys started these discussions, but how long have you been preparing for this moment?
Since I arrived. There was an opportunity, and not every opportunity, that's presented am I going to jump at. But, when I first arrived and there was an opportunity in the American, and, at that point in time, I didn't feel it was the best move for us. So we're always preparing for what's next. And, as I think about where the industry's going and ultimately, how we play the hand we've been dealt, and it's a really good hand, but you can always make it better. And that's my goal and responsibility in leading this department in Bronco Nation. So yeah, this has been always out there as a potential option. But, sometimes it takes time, and it took a little more time than maybe we wanted or all thought. But, I'm excited for today and the last week as we've prepared for this, and it's always what's next.
As you look at the future, you recently signed a contract extension. Obviously, you're excited to be here. What is your final message to Bronco Nation?
We are not going to stop, and I'm going to say it over and over and over. I believe in what we're building, and yeah, there's risk, Jay, and I understand nothing's guaranteed. Every decision I make, if I can get 51% confident that it's the right one, I'm going to do it. It's ready, aim, fire, and I believe movement creates opportunity, and that was a big part of this week. And we're not a finished product. It's always going to be what's next, and we are not going to stop. As soon in my mind, this is done, and I'm already on to the next thing. I'm going to get through media today, and Cody and I and Nate and others on our team, we're working on what we're creating, in regards to, our collective and NIL space and the Aux gym that I mentioned, and how am I going to pay for turf for softball, because we got to continue to elevate that space. It doesn't stop, it never ends, and that's where my passion comes from. I love what I do, and I'm just really grateful to be a Bronco, and I love this community, and as does my family, and it's always what's next.
Well, what a day again. Boise State joining the Pac-12 Conference July 1st, 2026. Brady, it seems like they've been so close for so long.
Yeah.
It feels weird to actually confirm and admit that this is happening.
Yeah, and it's great for everybody who waited patiently. I know it's going to really brighten up their weekend that we're heading into. A lot to look forward to at Boise State, and a lot to wait on and see how this is all going to shape out. Who's going to also be joining the Pac-12? Can they get enough power, high-profile teams, perennial powers to make this a power conference again?
Yeah.
We'll see.
We will see. Either way, Boise State's future is in the Pac-12 Conference. For Brady Frederick, thanks for coming in on your day off.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Wouldn't miss this.
Yeah, right? No kidding. I am Jay Tust. Thanks for watching this edition of Jay's Sports Bar, serving the Idaho sports community.